The rain had started to fall by late afternoon, light at first, then steady. By nightfall, the sky over Pennsylvania's Route 96 was smeared with thick clouds. Mr. Ben Ramirez, a 53-year-old veteran bus driver, stood in the small locker room of the Harrisburg Depot, wiping cold sweat from his forehead. Tonight wasn't supposed to be his shift. It was Wayne's, his younger, energetic colleague. But Wayne had called in around 3 p.m. with a raspy, barely audible voice, saying he had a high fever and couldn't make it. "You sure you can take it, Ben Ramirez?" the shift manager had asked over the phone. "It's pouring out there, and your name's not even on the roster." Ben Ramirez didn't want to say no. He hadn't missed a single emergency call in 15 years. It was a point of pride, maybe the only one he had left. So, with a tired sigh, he agreed. He took 2 Tylenols and buttoned up his company-issued navy jacket. His head felt heavy, as if he hadn't slept in days. His limbs ached, and something about tonight felt off. But still, the bus had to run. The passengers were waiting. As Ben Ramirez stepped out into the cold, misty night, he saw a familiar face already checking the tires and headlights. "Evenin', Mr. B," said Sam Price, the bus conductor. Sam was a wiry man in his 40s, always dependable and cheerful. "You good to go?" he asked, concern hidden behind his usual half-smile. Ben Ramirez forced a nod. "I'll manage. Just, if I start dozing, hit me with your coffee." Sam chuckled. "Deal." The two climbed aboard the silver and green Atlantic Breeze Coach Line's bus, which was already filling with passengers. Most were students returning from Thanksgiving break, blue-collar workers heading back to their shifts in Pittsburgh, and a few elderly folks with tired eyes and heavy luggage. A couple of vendors brought along large canvas bags, tied shut and smelling faintly of fried food. Ben Ramirez glanced at them through the rearview mirror. A chorus of sniffles, low murmurs, and rustling jackets filled the cabin. At exactly 9 p.m., he pulled out of the terminal. The windshield wipers swiped in rhythm with the dull beat of the engine. Sam stood in the aisle, checking tickets and giving nods to familiar faces. The highway was slick, the yellow lines blurred under the rain. Ben Ramirez stayed focused, though his vision occasionally swam. The heater hummed at low speed, but he still felt cold, like something was crawling beneath his skin. They passed York County. Traffic thinned. Buildings disappeared. The road narrowed into a 2-lane blacktop flanked by dense, sleeping woods. "This part always creeps me out," Sam said softly, standing behind Ben Ramirez. "Nothing but trees for miles. You ever get that feeling someone's watching?" Ben Ramirez didn't answer. He had that feeling right now. His eyes darted to the side mirror. For a moment, just a flicker, he thought he saw something move between the trees. A pale shape. Tall, thin. But when he looked again, it was gone. The rain picked up. Thunder rolled in the distance. Just as they entered a particularly dark stretch, there was a loud bang from beneath the bus. The vehicle shuddered violently, tilting to one side. "Tires blown!" Ben Ramirez yelled, steering hard to keep control. He managed to pull the bus to the shoulder. Sam leapt up, grabbing a flashlight. "I'll check it." "Wait," Ben Ramirez started, but Sam was already out the door. Passengers stirred, some muttering nervously. A few looked out the window, trying to see what happened. Ben Ramirez could feel the tension climbing. Minutes passed. Then Sam returned, drenched and wide-eyed. "There's nothing there," he said breathlessly. "What do you mean?" "No nails. No debris. And the tire, it's not torn. It's shredded. Like clawed at." Ben Ramirez's heart sank. "What?" "I know it sounds crazy, but I swear, it's like something ripped it from the side." They quickly began replacing the spare in the pouring rain, their hands shaking from cold and unease. By the time they climbed back aboard, most passengers were half asleep, except for a woman in the back row who whispered, "We shouldn't have stopped here." Ben Ramirez didn't reply. He pulled the bus back onto the road, tires spraying water behind them. As they drove on, something kept gnawing at his mind. Every time he passed a curve, he felt it again, the weight of eyes just beyond the trees. He checked the mirror. For a split second, he saw a figure standing at the edge of the forest. Still watching. But when he blinked, it was gone. He gripped the wheel tighter. "It's just exhaustion," he whispered to himself. He didn't know he was wrong. Dead wrong. The bus pressed onward through the winding road of Somerset County, where the Appalachian woods stood like dark sentinels on either side. The rain hadn't let up. It fell harder now, loud against the roof like hurried footsteps. Inside the cabin, the mood was tense. The sudden tire blowout had rattled the passengers. A few whispered prayers. Others kept checking their phones, though the signal had long since vanished in this part of rural Pennsylvania. Ben Ramirez gripped the wheel tighter, his knuckles pale against the faux leather. Sam sat silently in the seat beside him, no longer trying to make small talk. "You okay, Mr. B?" Sam asked finally, his voice barely audible over the humming engine. "No," Ben Ramirez replied truthfully. "Something's wrong with tonight." The headlights pierced the fog, revealing sharp turns and scattered branches. Ben Ramirez leaned forward, his breath fogging the windshield. Then it happened. A sharp flash of movement on the road ahead. A figure. Standing in the middle of the lane. Ben Ramirez gasped and jerked the wheel to the right. The bus swerved violently. Tires screeched. Passengers screamed. And then, the worst sound imaginable, the sound of nothing beneath the wheels. They were airborne. The heavy vehicle launched off the road and into the void. For a full second, it was silent. A horrifying calm. Then came the crash. Metal tore through trees. Windows exploded. Seats flew forward as the bus slammed into the side of a ravine. Everything turned white for Ben Ramirez. And then a faint beeping. A steady pulse. Ben Ramirez opened his eyes slowly. White walls. Bright ceiling lights. The smell of antiseptic. He was in a hospital. Pain roared through his ribs as he tried to sit up. "Take it easy, Mr. Ramirez," a nurse said, rushing over. "You've been unconscious for almost a full day." He tried to speak. "Sam? The conductor?" She hesitated. Her lips tightened. "Please wait for the doctor." Moments later, a middle-aged man in a blue coat entered the room with a clipboard and a sober expression. "Mr. Ramirez," he began, pulling up a chair beside the bed. "You're incredibly lucky. You survived a severe bus crash just off Highway 11. Your injuries are treatable, some cracked ribs, a concussion, but..." Ben Ramirez's heart raced. "But what?" The doctor looked down. There were no other survivors. Ben Ramirez stared at him. No, that's not possible. Sam was right next to me. The passengers, students, workers. I'm sorry. We recovered 22 bodies. You were the only one breathing." The room spun. Ben Ramirez grabbed the sheets with trembling hands. "I was driving. I killed them." The doctor didn't respond. He simply stood, patted his shoulder, and left the room quietly. Later that evening, a state trooper visited his room. The officer's name tag read Lieutenant Graham. His boots were still damp from the field. He pulled a chair close and took out a small notepad. "Mr. Ramirez," he began, "we've been reviewing the accident scene. Something's tough." Ben Ramirez didn't answer. He stared at the blank wall. "We surveyed the road. It's not known for accidents. No skid marks until the edge. No mechanical failure reported from your bus company. And," he hesitated, "there were marks." Ben Ramirez looked at him. "Marks? Claw marks?" Lieutenant Graham said slowly. "On the side of the bus." Ben Ramirez's eyes widened. "We thought maybe an animal. A bear. But these were too precise. Too long. Almost like something tried to steer you off the road." "And the figure I saw?" Graham raised an eyebrow. "Figure? I saw someone. On the road. Before the crash. Not human." The officer paused, then leaned in. Funny you say that. A couple who live near the forest claimed they saw something that night. A tall, white silhouette near the road, just minutes before the crash. What is this place? Ben Ramirez whispered. Graham sighed. Folks around here have old stories. About this forest. About things that come out when the rain's heavy and the moon's low. Most say it's just folklore. But after last night? He left the sentence hanging. The days in the hospital passed slowly. Ben Ramirez couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw them, the passengers, twisting in their seats, screaming, reaching out for help. And then Sam. Always Sam. His eyes. His uniform soaked with blood. Staring from the last row of the bus. One night, as a cold wind whistled outside the hospital room window, Ben Ramirez heard it. Footsteps. Soft, deliberate, coming down the hallway. Then stopping. Right at his door. He turned his head, heart thundering in his chest. The knob didn't turn, but a shadow moved under the door. Then, knocking. 3 gentle knocks. He held his breath. Sam? He croaked, tears rising to his eyes. No answer. The shadow disappeared. He didn't sleep again that night. When he was discharged a week later, no one from the company came to see him. No flowers. No visitors. Only silence. The guilt followed him like a second skin. And the shadows, they followed too. Even in daylight. Even in places shadows shouldn't be. He returned home to his small apartment in Scranton, where the walls felt too thin and the nights too long. And then came the dreams. Screams. Claw marks. That pale figure. And Sam, sometimes just standing at the end of the hallway, sometimes whispering behind the curtain. Why didn't you stop the bus, Ben Ramirez? The 3rd week after the accident, the walls of Mr. Ben Ramirez's apartment began to feel smaller. He had barely spoken to anyone. The news channels had moved on. The company never called him back. The only sound that kept him company most nights was the distant humming of freight trains and the rustle of wind between the cracks in his windows. But Ben Ramirez wasn't alone. He saw him again. Not in dreams this time. In the hallway mirror. In the dark kitchen doorway. At the foot of his bed. Sam never spoke. Never blinked. Just stood there, soaked uniform, pale skin, face stuck between peace and pain. One rainy night, as thunder cracked overhead, Ben Ramirez sat curled on the living room couch, hands shaking, a Bible and a Quran both open in front of him, desperate for anything to give him peace. He whispered, Sim? I'm sorry. I didn't know. I should have stopped the trip. I should have stayed home. Why do you keep coming back? No reply. But he felt it, a cold gust brushing past his neck. Turned. Sam was standing by the window, pointing, not at Ben Ramirez, but toward the old bookshelf in the corner. Ben Ramirez stood slowly, his knees weak. He approached the shelf, unsure what he was supposed to find. Then he remembered the old backpack. It had been with him on the bus the night of the crash. Somehow, the paramedics had returned it with his other personal effects. He opened it. Inside were a few basic items. Change of clothes, phone charger, and Sam's conductor badge. Ben Ramirez's breath caught in his throat. Why is this with me? He muttered. Suddenly, a knock, hard and fast, rattled the apartment door. He froze. Another knock. And a voice. A woman's voice. Mr. Ben Ramirez? He crept to the door and opened it slightly. A woman stood outside, soaked from the rain, an umbrella barely keeping her dry. She looked about 30, with tired eyes and trembling lips. Sorry for coming unannounced, she said. I'm Mina, Sam Price's wife. Ben Ramirez felt the air leave his lungs. They sat in silence for a few minutes, both sipping tea. Mina hadn't touched hers. I couldn't go to the hospital, she said quietly. I was 7 months pregnant then. I found out he was gone from a phone call. Ben Ramirez kept his eyes down. I failed him. No, she shook her head. You didn't. I know Sam. He respected you. He trusted you. There was another pause. Then Mina reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He wrote this. For you. I found it in his jacket pocket after the funeral. Ben Ramirez took it with shaking hands. It was stained from time but still legible. Ben Ramirez. If you ever read this, it means I didn't make it. I had a feeling. I don't know why. I've been seeing strange things on our route. Figures in the woods. Shadows that don't move like people. I told dispatch, but they ignored me. Just like they did when the old driver crashed near mile marker 241. Be careful. Don't trust the road. Sam. Ben Ramirez looked up, stunned. You saw things too, didn't you? Mina asked gently. He nodded, his throat dry. The figure on the road, it wasn't human. And there were claw marks. On the bus. Mina's eyes welled up, but she smiled faintly. He always said there was something wrong with that stretch. Something no one wanted to admit. Ben Ramirez wiped his face. I've been seeing him. Since the hospital. I thought I was going crazy. Mina looked up sharply. He's here. Ben Ramirez hesitated. He was. He doesn't talk, just stares. Points. And the air gets so cold. She clutched her belly. Our son never met his father. But if his soul hasn't moved on, maybe he's waiting for something. The next morning, Ben Ramirez made a decision. He packed a small bag and drove to Somerset County with Mina, where Sam had grown up. They followed the rural roads until they reached the small wooden house Sam's family once owned, now abandoned but still standing. They lit candles, placed Sam's badge on the front porch, and said prayers, in both English and soft, broken Indonesian, which Ben Ramirez used to speak in childhood. He cried for the first time in weeks. That night, they stayed in a motel nearby. Ben Ramirez dreamt again. But this time, Sam wasn't standing still. He was smiling. And then, he vanished into mist. When Ben Ramirez woke up, his chest felt light. For the first time in a long while, the air didn't feel heavy. Mina smiled when she saw him. You look different. Maybe I am. He returned home 2 days later. But that night, something happened again. He was brushing his teeth when he heard whispers coming from the hallway. He froze. The mirror above the sink began to fog, not from steam, but as if someone was breathing on it. Then words appeared in the mist. Find her. He stepped back, heart racing. What does that mean? He whispered. Was it Sam? Or something else? Had he misunderstood? Or was his debt not yet paid? The fog on the bathroom mirror had faded, but the message haunted Mr. Ben Ramirez all night. Find her. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling. His apartment felt colder than usual. The heater was on, yet a chill clung to the air like damp wool. And deep down, he knew it wasn't just a message. It was a plea. The next morning, he drove to the city library and dug through public records, news articles, and anything tied to the crash. There were memorials, official statements, even conspiracy blogs about the haunted stretch of Route 11. But no mention of her. He returned home frustrated. As he walked in, the old backpack from the crash fell from the shelf, even though it had been stored away in a closed cabinet. He froze. Its zipper slowly slid open on its own. Inside was something new, a folded receipt, stained and wrinkled, with the logo of a roadside diner. It was dated 2 days before the crash. Scrawled at the bottom, "Thanks again, Mr. Ben Ramirez. I hope my daughter grows up brave like you. Marlena C." His heart dropped. Marlena. She had boarded the bus that night with her daughter. He remembered now, a soft-spoken woman in a brown coat, and a little girl holding a stuffed rabbit. He rushed to his desk, searched online using the name, and finally found a listing. Minerva Kavanaugh, age 5. Currently in state foster care. Ben Ramirez felt his knees buckle. She survived, he whispered. She was on the manifest. But they must have lost track of her in the chaos. Then it hit him. That was the girl Sam had wanted him to find. Not a ghost. A child. Sam's unfinished concern wasn't just spiritual, it was human. It took 3 days of paperwork and questions, but Ben Ramirez was eventually allowed a supervised visit. The child had been moved to a group home just outside Pittsburgh. When he arrived, he found her sitting alone on a bench under a rust-colored tree, holding that same ragged rabbit. She was quiet, alert, her eyes far too old for her age. "Hi," he said gently. "I'm a friend of your mom's, and the man who drove your bus that night." She didn't answer, but she looked up at him, studied his face. "Do you remember me?" She nodded faintly. "My name is Ben Ramirez. I didn't know you were alive. I thought no one made it." The girl spoke for the first time. "Mom put me under the seats. Said to stay real quiet." His eyes welled with tears. "She saved you." "She told me someone would come for me," she whispered. "A man named Sam." Ben Ramirez's heart stilled. "I think I'm here because of him," he said. The process was long. He wasn't family. He had no children of his own. And he was still recovering mentally. But Mina, Sam's widow, stepped in, writing letters of support, offering to co-guardian the girl until everything was official. Months passed. But one day, the court approved temporary custody. Minerva moved into Ben Ramirez's modest apartment with a room of her own, freshly painted with blue stars. She didn't talk much, but she smiled more often. Slowly, the silence in Ben Ramirez's life began to fade. He told her stories, taught her how to make pancakes, watched cartoons with her even when he didn't understand them. And every now and then, he'd catch her looking at the hallway, as if waiting for someone. One evening, as snow fell softly outside, she asked him, "Is Sam still here?" Ben Ramirez looked at her, surprised. "Why do you ask?" "Because I saw him," she whispered, "standing by my door last night. He smiled at me." Ben Ramirez swallowed hard. "He's probably just checking in on you," he said, gently brushing her hair. "Maybe he knows you're safe now." She nodded. "Can I draw him a picture?" "Of course." Weeks later, Ben Ramirez was sweeping the living room when he saw something that stopped him cold. On Minerva's wall, next to her crayon sketches of trees, stars, and her mom, was a drawing of a man in a conductor's uniform. He was standing by a bus, smiling, one hand raised in farewell. Below it, she'd written, "Thank you, Sam." That night, as Ben Ramirez prepared for bed, he passed the hallway mirror, the one that had once shown shadows and written warnings. But now, it reflected only one thing. No fog, no whisper, no presence, just quiet. Years passed. Minerva grew. She laughed louder. She ran through the small yard with other kids. She called Ben Ramirez Uncle Bud. Sometimes, Dad. And Ben Ramirez? He still had nightmares, but they faded with time. He continued to visit Mina, helped pay for her son's schooling, and together they kept Sam's memory alive, not as a ghost, but as a man who had stood up for what was right, who had whispered from beyond not to scare, but to guide. One day, on the anniversary of the crash, Ben Ramirez took Minerva to the edge of Route 11. They stood near the guardrails, where the trees had long since regrown. He laid flowers at a small stone memorial with all 22 names engraved. She asked softly, "Do you think they're okay now?" He looked up at the sky. "I think they've forgiven me, because I finally did the right thing." She reached up and held his hand. As they turned to leave, Ben Ramirez glanced back once. And just for a moment, he saw Sam standing by the tree line, smiling, then gone. For good this time.